Book 0. Forward. The young man wakes up from a deep and telling sleep. He stands up from his bed and walks alone barefoot, then he turns the shower on. The young girl, mad, angry, running intensely through the forest, willing herself to push and push onward. She stops to take a breath and relaxes for a second. As she does, she looks behind her shoulder and experiences the world normally. She then turns the music back on, her headsets back in her ears. The tune is pleasant, everything her heart desires, even if it's a bit gloomy and intense. The man she knew is no longer there. She hears a noise and starts running, runs into a field and trips over and falls in the dirt. She looks around, scared, the music ringing in her ear, the sound, it was so violent and sudden. She takes off her headsets and tries to listen for noises ever so faint. She sees and looks into the forest. Then it shows itself. The light ever so slowly, like a rising moon, moves away from the trees and leaves. Then it reveals itself. 2 miles away, a young pup lost is following the trail of a squirrel. It follows the scent into the forest, even darker than before, and then suddenly it decides to run. The power of the unknown and violent decides your move for you, whoever you are, whatever the cause and whatever the mystery. The man in the shower will receive a shock. The girl in the forest will meet the thing that's just there, and the young pup, well, let's leave that for whoever reads the book. I am John. Prologue. The trees were tall and strong, towering like pillars of wood. A large gate stood there opposite. A stone and metal are stronger than forest wood, but much smaller. It was night in the woods at a spot so secluded and dark that even the animals would shun it. There were barely any bugs either, only grass and trees standing stiff in place. The forest was darkening. Usually I would remembered it as a bright and shiny place. Whenever the moon was up, you could see its rays falling over wildflowers and distilling in the soft vapor stemming from small caves underground. But now the light was dim. The moon wasn't full. It was barely reflecting any sunlight of its cold, white skin. The forest was a terrain at part rough, at part flat. Deep in it, it could be foggy or dry and cold as a desert at night. It had roads, pathways, and a variety of flowers, sometimes purple, sometimes blue and yellow and purple leaves producing a smell like that of lemons spreading around the trees and sometimes gathering up on rocks. Near our town there were rumors about wild animals running loose and attacking people. Some of us joked about it, that maybe there was a masked killer out there slashing people up, like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th Part 3. A masked man escaped from a mental institution, on the run from the police, craving the sweet taste of female blood or something, deeply infatuated with some of his family's young women, a niece or maybe a daughter he had unusual desires for, things that made him feel bitter and alone, thoughts that disgusted him until one day he let them overtake him, burning inside his skull. Thoughts that ripped apart his moral state. These were the things in our minds then. April of 1992, the time of fun and jokes and a lack of authority. Grown-ups were retarded, geeks and jocks had their place in the world, and 9-year-olds were told about not taking candy from strangers. People were simple then, in a way virginal, kept in their quiet little places, into their quiet little homes. People actually believed those stories were kid stuff and nothing more, but nothing couldn't compare to the truth. Nothing would prepare us for what was really out there. Looking into the forest, which was covered in darkness, hiding in the shadow of the night, there were things that we only heard of in campfire stories, things we never knew existed. There was something out there and it was waiting for us. My name is John Matthews. I'm here to tell you about a story. It's not my story. It's the story of a boy I knew named Eric. We weren't very close. In fact, we barely ever spoke to each other, but something linked us. The reasons for doing what we did. We each had separate needs and separate wants, but we shared a common objective. My reason was to protect my friends. His, I don't know, but whatever that reason was, it eventually killed him. Separate text. April 4th, 1992. There was a fence covered in barbed wire protecting the base. The ground around the base was rough and bitter in its scent. There were a lot of trees growing there, but wildlife seemed to shun it. It was an old retired army base, which once functioned as a research facility for the military. The old smell of sulfur still lingered in the air, and the taste of chemicals stuck on the grass and leaves. The base had one main building, the research facility, old and abandoned. The cement coffin had a hole in it. It was made by some kind of explosion. Around the hole there were burn marks. The scorched surface of the building had the smell of sulfur, but the ground around the building had a completely different essence of taste. Chemical dust had sunk into the soil and polluted the dirt. Oddly enough, it barely affected the plants, but made the bugs stay away. Its taste seemed to repel them whenever it was inhaled. Otherwise it fell inert. On the fence there is a sign, private property, beware of dogs.